I have been in the rabbit hole without any air. It's dark and deep for all of those things that all of us women are managing every day. The kids have left and I've popped back out. And the question is, who am I? Because I'm either somebody's mother, somebody's wife, or somebody who works at this company. And
a lot of people's spouse.
Yes, yes.
Hi, I'm Sam McKenna, and you're listening to the Show Me You Know Me show, a deep dive on the impact of personal connection and empathy from the perspective of some of the world's most successful executives. Our guest today is Kim Peretti, Chief Customer Officer at Restaurant 365. Okay, so you might start listening to this episode and think, did they know the recording started? And yes, Paige did warn us that she started rolling, but the conversation was so good before the interview even started that we decided to go with it and throw the questions right out the window. Despite the fact that Kim has an incredible career that could have been a multi-hour conversation. She's been with DocuSign, Adobe, and Klaviyo, and was even with two of them when they went to IPO. This episode is a real treat, entirely because of Kim's vulnerability and candor. We talked about the unreasonable expectations placed on women, the pressure to keep it all together, and how we find our identity. I can't wait for you guys to meet her.
I didn't prepare to not work because I thought I would have 9 to 12 months of full-time at the home memory care with my mom.
Yeah.
And so I tell everybody, if you're going to retire or even semi-retire, you have to plan for it. And if you're not ready, so I'm not really ready because I think intellectually and socially, there's this, I've been so blessed to be in tech for almost 30 years around amazing people, especially the women in the community over time. I'm still friends with my colleagues from PeopleSoft. And so how fortunate am I?
I actually have just a quick question on that. So preparing, you have to prepare to retire. Is there a way that you think about that that's not financially driven? That isn't have your ducks in a row, think about this, set an end goal in mind.
Yeah.
Is that a mental preparation? Is it something different?
Yes. So, let's take the financial out because you've just thought, I could go do this. Let's assume that's a given. If you think about the output and the dynamics of your everyday, socially, intellectual challenge, I'll call them adventures, things and places you go, you have to navigate. All of that is every day. And when that suddenly stops, who are you? What does your life and what value? And I'll be transparent. I put a lot of who I am and the value I have as a person in the work, rightly or wrongly, it's at a C-level, it's not a job, it's part of your lifestyle and who you are, the social communities, the people you are engaged with, even outside of work. So all of that dynamic changes where you decide to live and the people you're around. I will just say, I won't say where, but my husband and I were thinking about where would we want to live
Next.
in the colder months and maybe not in California because we live on Cape Cod part of the time. And he mentioned some places and specifically some very specific things. And I said, those would not be my people. And I said, I don't know that there'll be anyone like me. And I morph a lot in other situations temporarily because people have no idea. They don't work in tech. They're not executives. That community, I can guarantee. And sure enough, he did some research. He goes, not the right place for us. But, it's those things too. And not to sound I have my dad in the background going, Kim, you're being an intellectual snob. I'm not meaning to be, but there's something I've been blessed to be around such greatness and rich conversation and engagement. So those are all the things. Where are you going to live? And how will you fulfill the constant, I'm always learning, always growing, in the social aspects that come with that are the things that you have to think about. Because it just going cold turkey, which I did, was fine because I travel cross country. Super. Everyone should do it. It's awesome. But then that was over. And what do I want to do with my time?
So I have a question for you. So you talked about like you have to think about your every day when you retire. So the places you go, the community
Yeah.
you build, the things you work in, outside of the time you took to be with your mom and then maybe that cross country trip. Have you ever had a job where you have left the role and you left the role on a Friday and let's call it a week, maybe 2 weeks max that you had it off before you started the next job? Have you ever taken any kind of sabbatical?
Yeah, I did. When I left DocuSign, I took 6 weeks off.
6 weeks off,
Yeah.
okay. I think one thing that's interesting about what you said is when I find so many executives, but especially women, are so we just charge hard, and especially at the executive level, we go and go. So we usually leave on a Friday. We take a long weekend, a Labor Day, and then we start on that Monday or Tuesday. But I think what's interesting, and I wonder if you went through this, the amount of women that I spoke to, again, at the executive level after COVID, who took sabbaticals and said, I need a pause. I've worked for 30 years. I need a break. And then when they took that break, to your exact point, they were like, who am I if I'm not the chief customer of this? Who am I if I'm not SVP, CFO of this? And I think it's a thing we don't talk about a lot. And I think it's a thing because we don't talk about it that makes us feel isolated when we're like, the hell do I do with my day today? Did you go through that at all in your 6 weeks or have you heard the same?
Oh, yes. I went through it through the 6 weeks. I went through it, between August and January. Yes, and I will tell you, a while ago, I was interviewed for and ended up being a little snippet, but it was about women in midlife.
Mm.
It was for Oprah Magazine, by the way.
Hey, that is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, I only had, like, 1 sentence, but anyway, they interviewed me, and it was about, like, that next stage, and for me, it was a couple of things happened. One is I had developed in my career, so it was all-encompassing,
Mhm.
and my kids, which had been the other half, my husband, my kids, my family, was all-encompassing, and what was happening is my kids were now in college or going to college and had left the nest. They both, were not local. And the only thing I had was the work. And the quote was something to the effect of, I have been in the rabbit hole without any air. It's dark and deep for all of those things that all of us women are managing every day. The kids have left and I've popped back out. And the question is, who am I? Because I'm either somebody's mother, somebody's wife, or somebody who works at this company and does the
Somebody's boss.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of people's boss.
Yes. 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 And sometimes I'd say this to my family when we go somewhere new because they all look at me like, where are we going? I'm like, listen, I don't want to be the boss or in charge. I don't know either. I've never been here before. Come on.
To figure it out together. You
I'm
guys
just
planned
as
something.
smart and dumb as you all too. Come on, It's like, there's a lot to carry. I'm not carrying the water,
No kidding.
Flying through Athens, Greece airport, my husband's like, "Oh, which way do we go?" I've never been here.
Read the signs.
Read the signs and you tell me, which way do we go? I just wanna shut it off for a minute. Come on,
They say this like the maddening thing about like husbands and wives too, and like the husband's unloading the dishwasher and he's like, do you know where the spatula goes? And she's like, you've lived here for 5 years. You know where it goes,
Yeah.
and it's like, figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yes. I
Cracks
I
me up.
feel very strongly about that too. So, yeah, I think that comes up at different moments in your life.
Yeah.
I think it comes up for women. For women, if I could do it all day long, I would be, and maybe that's my next chapter is how do we help women through the life changes? So think about it. We
Mm.
tell our daughters, our sisters, our aunts, or friends, whoever they are, you can be anything. And I remember my dad has 4 daughters. He's amazing. He went to see me. I spoke at the mass conference for women,
Mhm.
and the sea of thousands of women, he's in the middle. I'm like, "My dad's here," and he stood up. It was so great because he's just a huge advocate of his girls and of women, and I think that's part of who I am. But what's interesting is even with him, he would say to me, you've got to read, you've got to be educated, and then work harder than anybody else to get ahead,
Mhm.
especially as a girl at the time. So I won't tell you how old I am, but things have changed. Thank you. I think they need to continue to change. But what's interesting is we send you to college,
Mhm.
tell you to go get a good job, to be independent. And if in your life journey you end up with a family, the dynamics for women with family are incredibly complexified. And we are asked to make decisions about all the investments we've made in ourselves, even not consciously. But I mean, I'm married to an incredible guy who was supportive, but he would walk out the door every morning because he had to be in the office, text a little bit more flexible. I was responsible until I got help for, does everyone have their homework? Have they been fed? Are they clean? Do they have on clean clothes? Get them to school on time. Are they vaccinated? Have all the forms been turned in for any like everything? Then I had to immediately turn it on and go to work, put a different face, and remember everything I have to do for the day. And then when I get home, I have to figure out how to take everything I've been thinking about at work off the table, refocus. And when I'm done, I know I have something due in 2 days. I'm going to get back on. And we just haven't figured out how to help women enough, is my personal feeling. There's still a disproportionate amount. And some of it I think is just inherent. I'm a mom, so I don't know that anyone is deliberately doing anything bad. And so that inflection point is inflection point number one. I now have a child or children. Who am I? What does my job mean to me? Where does it fit in this? And there are financial, psychological, and social things to consider. And then it's the next trajectory is, do I want to go for that job? Do I want the promotion? Can I do the promotion because of those same dynamics? And then I do it. And this is where, with my VPs, my senior directors, this is not balance, Kim. And I was like, if I could from the rooftops, it never is. Just do your very, very best. It's, there's some imbalance there. And then you get to where I am. So there are these inflection points that cause us to think about who we are, what's important. And I think in all of that, we lose a little bit of ourselves until we get to maybe this point and go, the kids are grown, both work, live on their own, they're thriving. I don't have a full-time job anymore. Who is Kim Peretti and what's important and where do I want to spend my time?
I don't know who's trying to hold back tears more, if it's me or Paige, as you yeah. I mean, good job that you're on mute. You get to be on mute through this. Oh my gosh. I think like you, there are so many similarities in the things that you've talked about that I have just gone through, that we have gone through, the mothers on our team. Part of what you said is like you read my LinkedIn post yesterday. Even just talking, it's crazy. It's talking about who you are outside of being a mom and when that change happens. So I had a little boy last January, and at 42 years of age, it took me a very long time to hold my breath and step off the high dive and say like, I think that this is what I want, and I hope it goes well. And it's the most magical thing, as any mom out there knows who was terrified and or excited to do it. Like, holy crap, you can just never imagine how wonderful it is till you get there. There are the valleys as well, right? It's not all cupcakes and rainbows, and it's hard as shit. But, I think even my post yesterday talked about getting back into a workout routine. And it took me 15 months to slowly give myself grace. I was hard on myself. I set deadlines for myself. 9 months pregnant, 9 months bounce back, all these things that I wish I'd just given myself more grace. But it's an identity crisis. It's, oh, I have to put pants on with buttons again. And like, what's that going to be like? Or even you feel, I don't know if you went through this, and Paige, I don't even know if you did as well, but when somebody was like, my little boy's name is Alexander. And so they would say, where's Alex? And I would say, who? And I'm like, oh shit, that's right. I have a child. Yes, good. I'm a parent. Got it. And it's kind of that, even that mentality, but the mental load you talk about is tremendous. And I think I'm married to an exceptional human. He is an attorney. He is in the office every single day now, but it's the same thing. And we were having a conversation and said, you get to leave in the morning. You get to listen to your podcast. You're on the metro. You have the downtime. You don't have to pencils down at 5 p.m., as I like to say, because our nanny is going home or daycare calls. Like you can leave at 5:20 or 5:45 and then come home. And while he picks up so much work here in terms of always cooking our meals and all these things, it's different because you are managing 5,000 things. And what you said is the exact same thing. I'm about how you basically change faces twice a day, right? I leave our kitchen and I walk in and I'm like, okay, what is happening today? And you have to be this person for all the people, your clients, your team, your responsibilities. And then you close that out and you're like, okay, I'm mom and wife and still catching up at night, right?
Yes. Yes. And when I was at Adobe does a phenomenal job with their women's program. Donna Morris, who's now the chief people officer at Walmart, one phenomenal person. She and her teams created an incredible women's program. In one of like the sub meetings that they would hold was for go to market. And there was a great guy named Max Long who was my boss, and he did it for. And as I was on the panel with 5 colleagues, and I remember, we had a group of people and a couple of my colleagues. I'm kind of spicy, if you haven't picked up. I can be the provocateur. And so they're like, Peretti, because at Adobe they called me Peretti. Don't you hold back. You tell them there is no balance. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I won't be lying. Sure. So they queued up and what was interesting is it didn't matter age, ethnicity, job role, you name it. People came up after, and we just need to do this more, and said, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Like I'm failing at everything all the time.
Yeah.
I'm never good enough at any of these things because it's always a give and take. And I said, that's actually that's homeostasis for us, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not good at this, by the way. In fact, I'm terrible at it. Is how do I find peace in knowing I'm doing the very best that I can? Because I suffer from it. I had an extraordinary boss, Lambert Walsh. She was phenomenal. Talk about a woman's advocate. He changed my life professionally. And so I want to call him out. He asked me within 6 months of working for him, are you enough? Do you feel like you're enough? And no one had ever asked me that before.
Now, did you cry for 10 minutes and then figure out the answer, or?
I cried in his office many times. He was at Adobe, and then we worked together at DocuSign. Of course, I would follow him anywhere. And I remember saying, yeah, I don't think that I am. And part of his mentorship and leadership was helping me understand that I was and what I could bring, and being an extraordinary advocate. There was a program that I was privileged enough to attend there. When I came in, I was a GM of a very tiny group. It grew to be fairly substantial, but I was still the smallest in his almost $1 billion in success and services. I was the smallest business unit. And about 6 months in, he called me and he says, I have 3 spots. He had 3,500 people in his organization. He said, I have 3 spots for the executive top talent program, and I'm putting you in. And there's a cadre. And that program changed my life. The people I met there, who are colleagues from across this 12,000, I think it's 20,000 today, but it was about 10 to 12,000 people at the time. What a privilege to just be around them and the executives. I remember Ann Lunas, who was their CMO, Donna had introduced me to her, and informally, I showed up there every so often. And I remember I showed up with an idea, and she's like, Kim, you don't have juice. I'm going to give you juice. Like those dynamics, I know she's phenomenal. She was there forever. She's probably someone to interview because I think she's now retired, but she's phenomenal. But I just remember thinking, as all of this transpired, that somebody believes in me, and I am. Not all the time, but I am bringing enough. And it changed the trajectory. Everybody needs a Lambert Walsh in their life because he found a way. I think for women, it's harder, but he found a way for me to find a way to believe a little bit more in myself. And that will derive confidence. So
Mm.
I think women, and I've seen my confidence ebb and flow in different situations, even as a CCO. So I'll just tell everybody it's not a done deal. Depends on who it is and what the topic is and all kinds of things that I've had moments since I've seen CFOs and other women and men, quite frankly. It ebbs and flows, but how do you find a little bit more of that confidence when someone believes in you and you begin to believe in yourself? You can do anything. And I tell people now, I was just talking to someone where I am now who reminds me a little bit of myself, only she's way smarter. And I said, "Just continue to be fearless, and I
Mhm.
will be behind you, supporting you, but just go. You're right on," and I that is because someone paid it. I'm paying forward, and I think that's the opportunity that I have today. Anyway.
I th I think when you say you get the question, "Are you enough?" And you say, 1, just, like, shining a light on how phenomenal it is to even be asked that question that
I
someone.
know!
Right? That's why I'm like, I would have just cried for ten minutes, like, is was he a therapist? I like, my
Oh, he
god.
should well, yeah, no, I don't know if I cried a lot with him. I don't know if that time I cried, but he would make me cry regularly because he would ask
Oh,
these
yeah.
questions,
I
Yeah.
I think you get that question, you say no, or you say you don't think so, and then somebody politely, disagrees with you and says, "Here's what I see," right? And that confidence and that courage and that opportunity to be fearless comes from having a leader like that. And how few of us I've had one like that and a mentor like that who ended up being my wedding officiant, but just one like that in my 12 or 13 bosses, all boys that I've had in my career, what I would have given to have 2 or 3 just like that. But what I think is also interesting is the don't think I'm enough usually comes from those people who end up being the most successful. And it's interesting, even as we work with executives, like building their brands on LinkedIn and everything, more successful they are, the least likely they are to talk about it. I think one of the things about you too that really stands out to me is your authenticity. And I think that there's something that happens with a lot of executive women. Once they start to climb the ladder, they think they're not allowed to be who they were anymore. They need to be somebody different. They need to be more buttoned up. They need to be formal. They can't be as personal anymore. And I think as we can tell from this conversation, that's just not something you ever subscribe to. Is that just how you've always been? Did you get mentorship from that? Because what a welcome breath of fresh air, I think,
Mhm.
from what we normally see.
Well, I think there's a couple of different things. One is I never thought I was gonna be in business 'cause I don't think I'm a business person. I think I'm a heart anagram. I'm a 2 and a 1. Sometimes a 7, it depends. So I am a feeler. I feel people too, which I tell people I'm not the smartest person, but I'm the granddaughter of a politician and an empath. And that is the number one thing people tell me is empathy. So all those things I think are part of what make me who I am. I will say this, I worked for a Swedish company 14 years ago for a few years, and Swedes are very flat. They don't like hierarchy. And one thing I learned, so you just learn along the way. So I am who I am anyway, and I'm kind of a goofball on a regular basis. I was the social chairperson for my school, just to give you a vibe. And then he demonstrated, and really that European mentality of door always open,
Mm.
what you see is what you get. Here it's who I am. And I really found that refreshing, number one. Number two, I have a really spicy daughter. She's a warrior. She actually has been in sales and got promoted into marketing. She went to the manship school at LSU. She wanted to be in marketing, but she was promoted 3 times in her first year from SDR to something SDR to enterprise, where she was supporting 2 account reps, right? Just out of college, and now she's in marketing. But she would tell me, "You're intimidating." This was
Oh,
even in her high school years, like, "You have kind of a resting face." Do you realize you intimidate people? And I was like, really? And she's like, yes, you just give off this like aura. And I was like, oh, I don't feel like that's been the feedback.
You're alone in that. I have no RBF. Get out of here.
Right? Right. So, but it made me even more aware. I think number two. The third thing is, the third thing is people have said to me, when I ask hard questions or I'm really direct, is you realize it's coming from you, Kim. And this has been years in the making of people telling, and that stayed with me is somebody is being incredibly vulnerable in front of you right now. And in your position, they don't know you and they're presenting something and they just hope to God it meets the mark. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't, soul could be crushed. Now, that doesn't mean you don't ask for excellence, you don't expect excellence, you don't ask all the questions and provide the right feedback, especially if it's less than what it should be and there's development and improvement to be had. But over time, I would say even in the last 5 years, just continuing to kind of relax and be more open, I think creates a better outcome for the teams and the people that I lead. And it feels a lot better. I know I have colleagues and they've told me there's the two faces of Eve, so to speak.
I get this
Uh,
sometimes too. We don't know. You don't know if you're going to get really like hard charging Sam or generous, give everything away for free Sam.
yeah.
So I'm trying to strike a better balance there. One maybe final question to ask you: in the age of what I call scaled and veiled outreach, so everybody making it look like they made an effort, they
Yeah.
used scaled outreach, they
Yeah.
veiled their attempts. What do we do to book a meeting with you? What does it take to stand out from
Oh, yeah.
all the noise?
Like, funny story, when I was at Klaviyo, I think in the first 4 months, it was clear that there was something going on with the payment process at that time, which is now almost 3 years ago.
Mhm.
I'm like, "This is really wonky. We should probably fix this," right? And I didn't know the intricacies of what is in the product, by the way, but it just so happened, like, during this month of, like, "What is this thing?" In comes an unsolicited email that's like, "Hey, Kim, I was on your website and the way you do XYZ is not optimized." And I was like, oh my God, that's speaking to me. And they went on in the email to describe what happened, what could be improved, and to book a call. And I'm like, of course I'm going to book a call. I was like, who are you? So then I got on with my CEO, who was also kind of was chief product officer. Him and the other founder were, co-product leaders. And I was like, hey, I found this tool. And he's like, I get where you're going, but I think we're evolving that in the product. And I was like, oh, I think this could be really great. Anyway, that really is a great, I remember it today because I was like, good on you. And I've received a couple of others, not quite to that extent, but it's like an interview.
Yeah.
Show up, do your homework. Who am I? Who do I work for? What is the company? Why would you want to be here? And have something unique to say. I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed are like, well, I noticed you went public with 2 companies and this company looks like it's on the same trajectory. You look like you can pick them. And I was like, oh, I
I
have
would
no
like
idea
some
if
of
this
that
one's gonna
IPO money. Yeah. Oh
what?
my God.
I have no idea if this one's gonna go, and that's really not a great answer.
Oh my God. It's terrible.
Terrible answer,
Terrible
but it's
answer.
the same idea.
I think I was gonna say too, granddaughter of a politician. This is so funny. Who was the politician?
His name was Vincent Shanley, he's my grandfather, and
Okay.
he's the representative from Boston, and, I mean, he hung around back in the day with the old guard, but he was part of Kennedy's campaign. His friend was Tip O'Neill, House Speaker Tip O'Neill.
Yeah.
There's a very famous mayor that he owes his mentorship and growth to, the mayor of Boston. And when I was little, my grandfather had been an alcoholic and then recovered. In his life's work, he started the first halfway houses in Massachusetts for people with substance abuse. But they had a butler's pantry off the side with a million cans of V8. That was kind of his poison, is V8. He
Me
switched from,
too.
you know, yeah.
I'm
So
obsessed. I would marry
imagine
V8.
floor to ceiling are cases of V8, but he had a
Speaking my
desk in there
language.
and a chair. And I remember having dinner at the dining room table and my grandmother hearing the door and going to the door and coming back and saying, Vincent, one of your birds is here. And so they called the constituents and people coming for guidance, particularly around substance abuse before it was the thing. We're
Dang, yeah.
talking early 70s. I was really little, really little. And he would get up from the dinner table and he would go to provide guidance on where you could go to get well, programs and things that could help. And I think about politics today in the role of being a servant leader. I will never be what he was, but ultimate servant leader, believed in his constituents and the old adage of I serve the people to better the people. And so that would happen on a regular basis.
Oh my gosh. We have to wrap up because we've got to run. But I have to tell you, we had the great grandson of William Howard Taft, John Taft, on our first podcast who talked about servant leadership. I don't even know how many parallels we have from all the things you just talked about in this entire. I mean, I was just telling Paige when you were gone, I was like, I'm going to go get wine and just go over to her house. I have no idea where she lives, but I'm going to wander Walnut Creek and see if it's there.
Oh my God, I'm in Danville.
Okay. We got to let you go. I know you got to go
Okay.
too. We'll follow up, but what a pleasure. Thank you so much
It
for
was
being here.
awesome to meet both of you.
You as
Thank you
well.
so much for letting me talk about myself for an hour.
I wish it
I
was
know.
7 hours. Thank you so much.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. It is truly one of my favorites. Now let's get into it to answer some burning questions from our audience. All right, who's ready for Sam Spills? Let's get into our Q&A.
I love this one on social selling. Can you give us your 2 best social selling strategies? You got it. So the first one that I would tell you, right, is look for the speed to comment on influencers' posts. Let me give you an example. There is a editor-in-chief of a publication that I would love to be featured in. Let's be clear. I'd love to be featured on the cover of this publication, but that probably will never happen. And every single time this person posts, I get notified about it on LinkedIn. I have their bell rung. If you don't know what that means, go to somebody's profile. And as long as you either are first degree connected or you follow them, you will then be able to see their little bell, be able to hit it and be able to get notified anytime they post. As soon as I get the notification that this person has posted, especially, again, this has to be an influencer, this has to be somebody who already gets a lot of engagement. What I want to do is I want to speed to be that first comment. Why? Because in that post, everybody's going to see his post, but then they're going to see my comment as well. And that means that I'm going to get more engagement, more likes. You can also get a little bit gamey here if you want and have 2 or 3 of your friends come like your comment right away so it stays at the top, because the comment that has the most engagement is going to be the one that's the most relevant on LinkedIn, which means it's going to be the one that's seen the most, which means you're going to get tons of visibility. So that's a great, easy way to grow your network, especially with somebody influential and with other people that are looking at that person's content. The second thing that I would tell you is think about how you can do what we call spearfishing for leads, and it's expanding our sandbox. So I look for executives that are in our ICP and that are posting authentic content on LinkedIn. Let me give you an example. The former chief revenue officer of Equifax is somebody that was our client for LinkedIn executive branding. Now, I found that she was posting content on LinkedIn, but not about Equifax. She was posting about her daughters, about New York City, about fashion, about dogs, all kinds of things. And so I went in and I engaged with her content about her recent trip that she took, about New York City. And then I connected with her and I said, I love seeing your content. I keep coming across it because I'm stalking you. Got you saved in the LinkedIn Navigator list. And I'd love to stay connected. She accepts. Maybe she says thank you. And that's it. I don't go in for the kill. I don't ask for a meeting. I don't pitch, slap her. That's with a P. I don't do anything. But what I do is I continue to monitor her content. Maybe next week I drop another comment. Maybe the following week I drop another comment. And then I go in for the kill. And I say, love your content. I would be grateful to bend your ear on how we can help you up your LinkedIn executive presence. And then that's it. I ask for the meeting. It's one of countless examples where that's worked, right? And 13 or so minutes of prospecting, not a pretty significant deal for our business. So, two quick things that you can do, right, to use the platform effectively and go against the grain of what other people are willing to do. Any advice for sellers who want to move into leadership? Yes, don't do it. What? Who said that? Here's the first thing that I would think about. Why do you want to move into leadership? Is it because you think it's the next natural step? Is it because you've been really successful and you love seeing other people win and you think you can scale what you can do? Why do you want to move in? Sometimes top performers are automatically promoted to leadership because if they can do it, they can probably teach other people to do it. But sometimes, especially top performers in sales, really struggle as a leader because one, they love control. Two, they love to do things their way. And three, if they're not having a great month, but one of their reps are, sometimes it's hard for them to find joy and to continue celebrating that person because they're not succeeding at the same time. So I would say is you want to think about leadership, sales leadership in the sense, especially as a frontline manager, that you are really, really passionate about teaching people, helping them succeed, rolling your sleeves up, being in the trenches with them, right? And you want to help 7 or 8 people do exactly what you've been able to do really well, right? And succeed in their careers. The only other thing I would mention is as you continue to move up through the ranks, you get farther and farther away from the sales process. So it becomes operations and dashboards and forecasting and all kinds of things like that, which isn't as fun depending on what you love. I think as I've gotten older, I realized I don't really love sales leadership. I love selling. I love being in front of the client, forecast calls and one-on-ones and, having to dictate every next step of what a seller is supposed to do when they need help to strategize. I don't know that it's really my jam. I love to do it instead. I love to be there. I love to meet with the client. I love to problem solve. And that's rich for somebody who's been in sales leadership for quite a long time. But there's also no shame, by the way. If you do happen to go into sales leadership and then you decide, I think I want to be an IC, there's also no shame in being an IC for the rest of your life. You have better control over your calendar, right? You own your territory. You can still print money and you can probably have better work-life balance than if you were a leader. Now, different strokes for different folks, but some things to consider.
That's a wrap on this episode, but stay tuned for the next one. And by the way, let us know in the comments what you think of the podcast. We're always looking for new guests and topics that you'd like for us to cover. See you next time.